Hey, Mr. Battellini here, and I may not be a genius, but I do know this. The human spirit is capable of great triumphs and also horrible evils and cruelties. We aren't naturally a good or naturally an evil people. We have the capacity for both. And the human capacity for evil has rarely been seen more clearly than during the Holocaust. It was a horror, and it was a tragedy, and it's incredibly difficult to talk about. But it's important for us to remember what happened during the Holocaust so that we can learn from that experience and, as informed citizens of this world and this country, ensure that it never, ever happens again. I'm Mr. Battellini. This is the Daily Lesson. All right, so your outcomes for today are to investigate the events of the Holocaust and to describe the gradual implementation of Hitler's final solution, which you'll figure out about in a minute. But first, your bell ringer. What was D-Day? Where did it take place? And name the countries that are in the Allied powers and then the Axis powers by the year 1941. So the last time we left off, what were the three countries in each of those alliances? And pause your screen. And welcome back. So we'll start right off with D-Day. D-Day was the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France during World War II. It took place on the beaches of Normandy, France. And the countries in the Allied powers and Axis powers are as follows. The Allies, remember, picked up two more allies because it used to be just England fighting it alone. And then Pearl Harbor happened, so the United States jumped in. And Hitler broke his treaty with Stalin, so the Soviet Union jumped in. The Axis powers are still the same so far: Germany, Italy, and Japan. Italy is going to be the first one to fall. But right now, early 1941, we've still got Germany, Italy, and Japan. So, there's a lot we can say about the Holocaust, and there's a lot of questions that students have every year about the Holocaust. It's something you guys come into the year having a lot of prior knowledge about, which is good. This is an important tragedy to know about in world history. If you have questions about this outside of what we talk about in this video, I know that we are all always happy to answer those questions. If you do have questions, it's perfectly appropriate to ask about what happened during this horrible time in history. But what I can say right off the bat is that there's sort of a myth that Hitler came to power and on the first day started sending Jewish people to concentration camps. And that is, in fact, a myth. It wasn't immediately obvious what Hitler was going to do and how horrifying it was going to become. He implemented this Holocaust gradually. And there were four basic steps that he used to get up to what we know as the Holocaust. And each step got more violent and more prejudiced and more unacceptable than the last step. And those are your four steps: definition and segregation, government-sponsored violence, registration, and then finally the final solution, which is the actual extermination of European Jews. So, starting with step one, the definition and segregation laws. When Hitler first came to power, he didn't immediately send Jewish people to death camps. What he started out doing was he just said that anyone with any Jewish blood had to be labeled and named officially a Jew, and that anyone who was Jewish had to obey further restrictions on where they could go. So they were put into caged villages called ghettos. In Warsaw, it was announced, in Warsaw, Poland, that any Jewish people living in Warsaw could only live in this one certain district. And they built brick walls and fences around that district. And if you were Jewish, you had to live in that district. Step two was when the government actually started getting violent. So it starts with something called Kristallnacht, which means in German, the night of broken glass. And that was in 1938. And Hitler's Nazi government encouraged people to vandalize Jewish property. Stores, houses, synagogues were destroyed, and the German government encourages this, and German police and German soldiers even participate in it. So step 2 starts to get openly and discriminately violent. Step 3 is when the Jews not only have to register as Jewish, they have to publicly identify themselves as Jewish. So not only do you have to enter a national registry just because of your religion, now you actually have to wear the symbol of that religion on your arm or on your chest anywhere you go so that anybody on the street could identify you as Jewish. So you can see between steps 1, 2, and 3 how this starts to get scarier and scarier. It wasn't obvious in the beginning that this was going to happen, but now the steps keep ramping up, and eventually we have what Hitler calls the final solution. And this is what you know as the concentration camps. So in 1941, Hitler decides that in order to give Germany Lebensraum, or living space, the Jews of Europe need to officially be exterminated. And he actually frames this, as horrible as it sounds, as a positive thing for Europe. He blames Jewish people for Germany losing in World War I, and he blames Jewish people for Germany's financial meltdown, and he says the extermination of Jews is necessary to make Europe better. So Jewish people from all across Europe are rounded up and taken to these concentration camps by train. And in the camps, the healthy and young people are used for a little while for hard labor, and anyone else is immediately killed. That's just a basic outline of Hitler's final solution and the Holocaust. But for now, your key takeaways. The Holocaust refers to Nazi Germany's systematic and state-sponsored extermination of European Jews in the 1930s and 40s. Hitler's Nazi regime implemented this gradually. Each step got worse and worse and worse. Concentration camps were used for labor and extermination, and it took more than 4 years for the Allies to respond to the horrors by liberating the camps. That's all we've got for you today. Your daily directions are to complete pages 23 through 26 in your packet. Stay safe, stay productive, and we will see you next time.